So last class, we talked about classical conditioning. Who remember some of the things mentioned about classical conditioning? What is classical conditioning from our previous class? Anyone remember? Well, yeah, we say natural stimuli, right? How we associate different things with that natural stimuli in order to make someone do something, right? To condition them. So if you really think about it in some odd way, as we learn more about operant conditioning, we're all running on a mental program, right? We've all been programmed. So say you guys are running on iOS 15.8, right? That's based off all the things you've learned, been reinforced to learn, and conditioned, right? And repeating, repetition, things that you've accepted. Whereas operant conditioning works on a little bit different. Operant conditioning works on reinforcing positivity and negativity, right? So we call positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement. In simple terms, it means reward and punishment. It means you will begin to learn based off the rewards and punishments that you experience. And whether those things stick or not, we would say someone has a natural predisposition to that thing. So think about that for a second. As you grew up, right, and you wanted something to happen, let's say a toy or something, and you would just cry out and have a fit. Either A, your parents just let you cry, right, and then reinforce that behavior, or B, your parents gave you something to make you stop crying, right? And so the positive reinforcement we would say there is whatever the parents gave you in order to make you stop doing something, right? But now you know you've been reinforced like, hey, if I exhibit this behavior again, my parents would probably give me something again, right? And now you can become bratty because you will get your way. You've already tested this theory. So operant conditioning really deals with cause and effect, right? And human beings aren't the only species that identify cause and effect of something, right? The rats, the ants, the mice, the whales, the dolphins, the birds, they all identify if something happens here, and I observe that something happens because of this, I should assume that it will happen again. Now we say it goes both ways. One is adding, one is subtracting, right? So for example, if you say, okay, I have a headache, I have to subtract the headache. How do I subtract the headache? Maybe I will try Tylenol. You say, I tried Tylenol. Did it help your headache? Like, no. Like, all right, well, maybe I'll try Advil. Try Advil, you say, does it work? Did it take away, did it subtract the headache? You say, yes, it did. So you know that the cause and effect of having a headache most likely would be your best way to get rid of it is Advil, not Tylenol. Now you've been reinforced to have a behavior to go buy a specific thing, not another thing that you try. Right? So that's just a simple way of explaining kind of the fundamental theory of operant conditioning. You know, it's basically adding or subtracting something and using some sort of reward or punishment in order to do those things. Right? So it works both ways. It doesn't just work primarily with, say in the scenario of the parent with the crying child, the parent could say, well, I'm agitated by crying. How do I stop the crying? Stop the crying by giving the kid something, right? So it works both ways, right? The kid gets something, the parent gets something taken away. Taken away would be the anxiety of rewarding the crying baby. So it works bidirectional. So here's the working definition, right? Operant behavior, behavior that operates in the environment to produce rewarding or punishing stimuli. Now we're going to look over probably the most famous person that deals with operant conditioning, psychologist by the name of B.F. Skinner. So B.F. Skinner is as big as, his name is as large as Freud or Carl Jung, those guys. All right, so Skinner had a Skinner box, which is basically just a box with different contraptions in it. One could be like a lever. If you hit the lever, maybe you get a reward of some food, or you hit the lever and it lets you out of the box. Sometimes he have like a mesh floor. He'd have a mesh floor so he could electrocute the floor, right, to get people to react, to get the animals to react. So he had all these different scenarios to try to observe and research how we learn based on operant behavior, like this reward and punishment theory, this concept. So like think about money, right? You're in this class primarily at Concordia, primarily because you make an assumption, right? It's all based on some sort of future assumption that you will make more money. This will guarantee you a job that you want, maybe a job you don't even want. The point is, you want money. Why? What's the reward for money? What's the reward? So we say, okay, it has to have some sort of meaning for you first. So the trick here is like, hey, this may not, the reward or punishment may not work for each and every individual. So some individuals say, I'm gonna go to college. And they go to college and say, hey, I'm rewarded with A's. I do good, I know if I do the work, I'll be rewarded. I'll be reinforced with an A. I'll be reinforced with good grades. And others is to say, hey, I don't care about the good grades. Good grades mean nothing to me. I say, I'm not going to college anymore, I dropped out. Like they were all in the same environment, being reinforced in the same way, but it doesn't stick to everybody. Which means you have to have a predisposition to the reinforcement. And if you think about that, that actually means what you naturally gravitate to. So if you're not good in college and grades don't matter to you, you're not predisposed, have a predisposition to say, I love school. School is where it's at. That means that's not naturally something that you gravitate to. Right? And that's an easy way to identify what you actually like and don't like, because it doesn't apply to everybody. All right, so then go back to the scenario with the parents and the kid. Mom gives the crying baby something, it looks at it, and it throws it. And says, I don't want this, right? Right, but it's a reinforcement. Yeah, but it's not the type of reinforcement I want. Yeah, I want to be motivated and reinforced with something, but it has to be something specifically that I want, that I desire. So in some way, a natural process happens. We have to have some sort of natural aptitude for certain things, for the stimulus, I would say, right? We say it's in contrast to classical conditioning, which involves respondent behavior, automatic responses to a stimulus. This one's not automatic. You either can accept or reject, right? You can come to class, come to Concordia, or you can reject it. Say, I don't want to. It's just, I have a natural predisposition to it. But going back to money, money buys stimulus. Money buys things that will stimulate us, that will motivate us. And maybe it buys things that actually will help us survive. And there's, we like, hey, money buys food. I need food to live. Money buys water. I need water to drink. I need transportation if I want to go somewhere far. It buys things that I would say are of necessity. All right, so an operant conditioning behavior operates on the environment to produce rewarding or punishing stimuli. Coming back to the classroom theory, right? It operates on the environment. You went to high school, you showed up, did the work, you got the necessary grades, you got rewarded by getting out of it. You moved on to the next phase. And had you not did that, you'd probably still be a year behind or so, still working your way to get to college. So organisms associate their own actions with consequences, right? Cause and effect. Cause and effect. You observe that if one thing happens, the next thing happens after that. And you see that it happens many times, and you have an assumption that this will happen all the time by doing something. Thus, you will either keep doing something or not. So actions followed by reinforcement increase, those followed by punishment decrease, right? In essence, you'll stop doing things based on if you find it to be something that's punishing stimulus, right? It'll decrease your actions. If you find something to be something that's reinforcing, that's positive to you, a positive stimulus, you will keep doing more of that thing. So think of how this is associated with addiction. Like, wow, man, these drugs make me feel really good. I feel great. Why would I not want to feel great? Right? Everybody wants to feel great. Say this is a positive reinforcement thing. And then you start doing more and more and more, and then terrible things start to happen to you in your personal life, social life, your own physical biology. Things start to go wrong. And thus these negative things will also punish you. And hopefully you'll stop doing as many drugs as you're doing, or whatever substance you're using. But you can see how this leads to some form of addiction to anything, not just drugs, but all sorts of things, right? It could be food, it could be sex, it could be all sorts of things that we find to be pleasurable, or some sort of reinforcing behavior. And we'll increase it to probably to a point to where we're punished by it in some way, shape, or form. Something bad really happened. So this is called the law of effect, right? Which states that rewarding behavior tends to reoccur. Get more A's in school, get 10 more classes. 10 more classes, go through college and finally get your degree, right? But you find it to be something of value and rewarding. So it's going to reoccur. Get up in the morning, be here at 8 o'clock, right? For a reason, for some sort of motivating stimulus. And you're going to keep doing it. All right, so this was designed and used in an operant chamber, which we call the Skinner box, for experiments that include a bar, a lever that an animal presses, or a key or disc that an animal pecks, right? So you can't really use a lever for, say, pigeons or birds. They need something to peck. To release a reward of food or water, as well as a device that records these responses. So here's the representation of a Skinner box, and here they're using a cat, right? So cat is placed in a box. Cat probably says, I'm confined, I have anxiety, right? I need to figure out how to get out of this box. Maybe cat starts sticking his head through here and says, tries it many times and say, well, this doesn't work, right? I'm too large to get out through the little slats. So cat starts trying all sorts of things. Finally, it hits this lever. Let's say it hits it by mistake. It hits it by mistake. This door pops open. Cat leaves. So let's try this again. Right? Put the cat back in again. Right? Maybe this time it's looking around a little bit more. And it takes him less time this time. He figured it out. And then a third time, a fourth, fifth time. And this is what we have. Right? On the y-axis, time required to escape. And on the x-axis, successive trials in the puzzle box. So clearly we can see from the first time it took him 4 minutes. 4 minutes to figure out. Right? 4 minutes to figure out that I need to hit this lever to get out. By the 5th time, it takes him 2 minutes. By the 20th time, it takes him about 20 seconds. So we clearly see that this works. we learn by cause and effect. We learn by trying something, see what happens. And we have an aha moment, right? The aha moment says something in our mind clicks to say, if you do this, this will be the result. So you can apply this theory to anything. You can do it, you can apply these experiments to rats, pigeons, primates, human beings. Got to get people to figure out how to solve a problem. Right? The thing about that, if you say, hey, Professor Ross, I'm not good at math at all. Right? I suck at math. How do you become better at math? This is how you become better at math. How to become better at anything in life. Absolutely anything. You just call it practice. You just do it over and over again. You do it over and over again. Now we say, hey, the caveat here, remember what we said, is not for everybody. A particular stimulus, you have to have a predisposition for the thing. You have to say, I want to get out the box. Right? Cat didn't want to get out the box. How long would it stay there? I don't know, a few hours. So you have to have a predisposition. You got to have something natural within you to say, I want to do this thing. This thing is rewarding, right? Getting out the box was rewarding for the cat, thus it kept being motivated to try to figure out how to get the box. All right, and so we say shaping, right? So by shaping animals' natural behavior, Skinner was able to teach these animals unnatural behaviors, such as teaching pigeons to walk in figure eight, play ping pong, keep a missile on course by pecking at a screen target. And here's a little bit better, I'd say more complex adaptation of his Skinner box. So we say, hey, we want to experiment on many different things that deal with the senses, right? With the eyes, with the ears, with taste, with touch, right? With sound. And we say, hey, all right, we will introduce a speaker here. So let's test some things on if we produce a particular stimulus of sound, can we get this rat to do something that it thinks will reward him for recognizing that sound? Right, and we'll reward him with food or water. Say if we could have a light come on, and each time the light comes on, he needs to hit that bar in order to get that food. When the light goes off, he can no longer get that bar, not get the food, because the bar won't work. So you can teach this rat over and over. So you teach the rat to identify light. You say, hey, the light comes on, how did you train your rat? How did you train your rat to do that? Well, cause and effect. You just tried it a million times, right? You just tried a million times. So we say shaping. Shaping in very common language would be starting off with little things and then increasing over time to do bigger things, right? It's progressive. Have them do something very simple and then start adding more complex things over time. And by the time you're done, you're like, wow, your rat's really trained to do complex things. How did you have him to do that? Well, you said we start out with simple things, right? You got reinforced with the simple things. You perfected the simple, and we moved on to the next step. You've perfected the simple, elementary school. You move up to high school, and now you're in college, looking at a little bit more complex theories, concepts, definitions, et cetera, et cetera. And you'll move on beyond this and do more complex things. Maybe some of you will create some products or services, right? Innovative stuff, some businesses, whatever. We say, how did you get to that point? It started from little things, and we got reinforced by doing things over and over and over again to do complex things. So reinforcement is any event that strengthens the behavior that follows. What time is it? So shaping is gradually guiding behavior towards closer and closer approximations of the desired behavior. With the method of successive approximations, which tends to be repetition that meets the desired outcomes, right? Responses that are increasingly closer to the final desired behavior are rewarded. All other responses are ignored. Right? You're only going to reward things where someone achieves the goal. You're not going to reward based on any other factor other than the goal. Think about that in terms of work. So I teach business, and so business has a lot of psychology in it. Ton of it. One of the things that induce people to do more work and be more motivated is titles. Right? You can give somebody a more cool title. You can say, hey, you were a janitor. Right? The title is janitor. How do I get you to be more motivated to do more work? One, I could give you a raise. Maybe I give you a big raise, and now you're going to do a ton of more work. But then I say, I don't want to give you a big raise, right? It'll hurt our bottom line. It'll hurt our profits. How about I give you a small raise, and on top of that small raise, you're no longer janitor. You're facilities manager. Like, isn't that the same thing? Sure. But there's something in our minds that say, hey, this actually reinforces some positive stimulation in me. It makes me feel better. I'm no longer a janitor. What are you? I'm a facilities manager. That's all it took. I'm going to make a little tiny raise. So think about this when you go to your jobs after you leave here. Don't be fooled by the titles, right? The thing is, you're in a position now where you want to feel great. And so what makes people feel great? What makes people feel great is the brand of clothes that they wear. What are you wearing? I'm wearing Jordans, Nike. I'm wearing Prada, Gucci. But isn't it just a shirt and some shoes? No, it's more than that. You're like, I'm wearing a shirt and shoes. Yeah, but mine is better. Why? Because that brand has value to it. It's powerful. Make somebody buy a $1,500 hoodie. I think we go to Walmart. I don't want the Walmart. It doesn't make me feel good. So how did you pay the money? So the company said we need a desired outcome, $1,500 for the hoodie. How do you do that? Social media, right? We would say social influence, social engineering. There are very smart people out there to trick the mind into believing certain things in order to get some sort of desired outcome. And it works. Right? Prada, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Balenciaga, Jordans, whatever. People pay a ton of money for them. And maybe the shoes cost $5 to make. And somebody paid $400, $5. The economics doesn't really match up. So Professor Ross is beyond the economics. It's about how it motivated me and made me feel. Right? Great. Right? And someone else said, I'd never pay that much, ever. Even if I had the money, I wouldn't pay that much. Why? Like, it doesn't stimulate. We said stimulus counts. Right? So not everybody's going to do it, even if they have $1 billion. Like Bill Gates looks like he shops at Walmart. How come he's not wearing Balenciaga? $10,000 suit. Doesn't stimulate him. Remember we said, right? He has the money. And maybe the money wasn't a reason for him to go into business. You're like, wow, I want the money. Why do you want to start the business? I want the money, Professor Ross. Like, hey, the successful people didn't want it. Not that they didn't want it, they didn't care. They care about only making something successful. They were stimulated by success. That they had an idea, they wanted the idea to be successful. Not because of money, but intrinsically, they wanted the thing to work. Money was just an after effect of that, right? So it doesn't work for everybody, but it can, if you can understand this stuff, it can help you see, like have foresight on the mental tricks that happen in society, right? Before you go to high school, you're primarily shaped by your parents, right? So really your total identity, what you believe, your values, your ethics, your morals, the way you view the world, your biases, your prejudice, all of that is shaped by your parents, right? We said over little, we use progressive timing, right? We say shaping. We do it many times. We reinforce, we say the stuff to you 1,000 times. Eventually it sticks. Even if it's a lie, right? A lie becomes the truth if you tell it enough in the minds of most people. So you say you can shape people. You can shape people's relationships through perception. You can get people to do whatever you want them to do by repeating it, right? Introducing it, see how they respond, see if it's stimulating to them, and they agree upon it, and we have to do it again. So the very smart people who are very deceptive, and probably evil, would be sociopaths and psychopaths. They understand this stuff naturally. They don't need a class or anything. It's like, oh man, I observed you not to do this. People tend to do this. Right? So they go out and harm a lot of people mentally. They deceive people. And so this is very, very, because this is how we learn. Literally how we learn. This is very, very important. I know it seems simple, but really think about it from a philosophical point of view. Like, wow. I might have to relearn or unlearn or retrain my brain on a lot of things to test it, to see if it's true, right? Just to see if it's true. It may be true, some of this stuff. It may be a lie, too. Things that have an open mind and a blank canvas to start from. So we say positive reinforcement increases behaviors by presenting positive reinforcers, right? We increase the behavior. We make people do more stuff by introducing reinforcement. Right? Some stimulus that, when presented after a response, strengthens the response. Right? And then negative reinforcement is taking away. Remember we say it's adding and subtracting. Negative doesn't have to be in the mind to say, hey, this is just completely a real negative thing. Negative just means subtracting, right? Increases behaviors by stopping or reducing negative stimuli. So a negative reinforces any stimulus that, when removed after a response, strengthens the response. We talked about like with a headache. Right? You have a headache, you need it to be removed, remove the headache. I've tried successful trials of different medication. This one works, thus I will keep buying this medication. Right? The doctors use it. Hey, I'll prescribe you this. Doctor, it didn't work, send me a new prescription. All right, we'll try that. That one didn't work. Send me a new one for medicine. This one works. Right? So keep sending them. So adding a desirable stimulus and removing an adverse stimulus. Right here they say pet a dog that comes when you call it, pay someone for work done. Right? So the dog comes, it wags its tail, it's looking at you. How do you reinforce it? By rubbing its head, rubbing the side of its body. Now the dog has an expectation, and you'll keep doing it. Okay? And if you don't do it, the dog will probably jump up on you and try to force you to do it. Right? The dog's like, nah. I need my stimulation that you give me usually. And now the dog's expected to be done with everybody. You're like, hey, get down. They don't like dogs, right? Somebody comes over to your house and the dog's jumping up. And here, fasten the seatbelt to end loud beeping, right? You know, I forget sometimes to put on the seatbelt, but then that sound does become annoying after time when you put it on. So here at the top it says primary and conditioned reinforcers, right? Primary reinforcement is an unlearned, innately reinforcing stimulus, such as one that satisfies biological needs, right? Unlearned is hunger, unlearned is thirst, things of that nature. And secondary condition is a stimulus that gains power through associating with a primary reinforcer. An immediate and delayed reinforces immediate occurs immediately after behavior. Delayed involves a time delay, which means just the interval of time that you're going to introduce, so that the animal or individual expects things at different intervals. So you say even pay period, right? Some people get paid twice in a month. Some people get paid once a week, right? And that may be a reinforcement to the work done, or if people want that type of job. You can say the number of hours worked, things like that. What's the time? What's up? Here, reinforcement schedule, right? Response will be reinforced based on continuing reinforcement schedule, reinforcing the desired response every time it occurs, or partial, right? Reinforcing the response only part of the time, results in slower acquisition, right? So if you don't give, say, a reward each time someone does the outcome of what you desire them to do, but you delay it, and you do it every other time you give them a reward, that means they'll take more time for them to actually acquire that behavior, right? Acquire that response, because you're delaying the gratification. You're delaying it for intimate. You're not giving it to them each and every time they do it. And here's this fixed and variable ratio schedules, which are kind of common sense. It's just a number of times you do things to get a response. Any questions? What's some observations before we go of this sort of, some other examples? What are some things you're doing in your life you say, hey, I keep doing it because there's a positive reinforcement, or I don't do that anymore because it's negative reinforcement? Some things in your personal life. So physical therapy, positive reinforcement, so you're gonna keep going, right? Keep showing up.
I talk to my siblings more. So like, you know, just like if I need money, my older siblings, I'd be like, hey, bring it like $10. They're like, oh yeah.
So is the reinforcement the possibility that you can get the money?
Yeah.
So think about it, and it may be intermittent. It may not be every time, right?
Right.
So it's like, well, okay, that's a good example of it being intermittent, right? Not every time, but you do know it does come around every once in a while.
If you don't ask too much, usually it's every month. For me, it's every month. I don't ask too much.
Yeah. And so obviously that means, remember we said it's bi-directional. It's not just you in the equation. Like they have to get some sort of reinforcement too. And the gratification be like, man, I'm helping him out. I feel good by helping out my brother, you know? And I know he's going to school, he's trying to better himself, do stuff, I know he's gonna need some extra cash, right? So for them, that's just a reinforcement too. All right, everyone.